All right, so we have effectively made a nav bar. If you remember, we made our nav bar. We did some styling to it, which now actually shows the account number. If I go into our thingy-mabingy, if I go into our thingy-mabingy, all right, so there's the account number. And it's got some style action. We made a main app, our main app component, which is grabbing our contracts, very important. It's running some state, it's doing some logic for the contracts, setting them up to state, and running props so that we can send this information around to different components and update the information as it changes. And then we render our nav bar effectively for the moment. So the next thing that we should build is another component, and we want this component to be the main component. And the reason why we're going to do this is we want to effectively keep some logic contained in main and then other logic away from main. There's a few good reasons to do this. One, it's good to compartmentalize anyway. It's good to create these components and have strict and create pools of functionality that work with each other. And also and another good reason, which is kind of has to do with that as well, is when you do this, then this allows us this ability to be flexible with our functions, to be flexible with our components, with our features. So we're going to be by creating a main component and putting in the main component our buttons, our form to deposit, to withdraw, including our staking balance. We can then use this loading. We can then work with our loading state here. Say while the page is loading, we can have a prompt that lets people know that the page is loading, that all the main information is loading, and then once it's loaded, we can display the main. So by separating it, we can do this in a really efficient way. And if that's not making sense, don't worry, we're gonna do it together now, so don't worry about that. We're gonna go through it. But let's get started. Here on building this main component. The first thing we're going to do is get rid of this text center because we're not doing that. And we're going to get rid of these H1s. So let's delete this. This is where we're going to put our main component in here. So it doesn't exist yet, but we can just write it in main like this. This is how we're going to be bringing it in. Okay, doesn't exist yet. And let's also change the center thing. We don't need this. So instead of text center, we're going to create a container. We're going to make the container fluid. These are just some styling, and we're going to make it MT5. And if you're wondering how I know what container fluid is in MT5, well, you can actually look up what these are just coming from React style that comes in from their global. These are just coming in from the global style that we have. Container fluid is actually from Bootstrap. So if you want to learn more about what you could do, you can look up React Bootstrap and check out if you want to get deeper into the styling. But this is just some basic styling just to make our app a little bit more pretty looking. And underneath the container, we're going to make our container here, and we're going to make another class name. We're going to set this to row. And inside of here, bring in a main style div. All right, so we actually have a main that's going to give us access to main parameters. And the type of parameters we can bring in are the role, for example. Role, and we're going to set the role to main. We're going to have some more class style here. We're going to do col-large.12 and ml-auto and Mr-auto. Okay. And then we're going to add a style as well. We're going to do max width to 600 pixels, and this needs to be strings. And we're also going to have a max height. We're going to do a min height, which is going to be 100 VM. And I'm going to explain what this is in just a second. So minimum height, max width. Okay, so main role, like we said, is we're accessing main, and then through that we can have the parameter of main. And then in class name here, we're adding basically for we're doing a large 12 for the columns. And then for the style over here, we're saying that the maximum width possible should be 600 pixels, but it should have a minimum height of 100 VM. And 100 VM is basically the entire view. So we're talking about 100% when we say 100 VM. And this is done in pixels. That's why we put the PX. It's just some basic styles. I don't want to get so deep into it because this is not a course on styling. I just want it to look decent. That's all. So since it's CSS essentially, if you are curious to learn more, I encourage you to just look these up and see if you can find your own kind of stylings that you would like to play with it. You know, it's its own world when it comes to styling. It's its own separate world. I'm more interested in functionality, but I like things to look good too. And okay, and so in our main, we're going to create one more div. And what are we going to put in this div? Well, actually, we're going to move our main out of here. Ugh, oops. And we're going to put our main in here in the div, right? Because that's why we created this. So let me actually bring this down. Okay, so what do we do exactly? Well, we just created some more divs. We created a container, which is basically going to contain our main. And then we did some stylization for some divs inside of it. So we're kind of creating a box here, and we're making it fluid. And what is MT? 5? Well, that means the margin to the top is 5. So we're giving our box 5 px margin to the top. So it has some nice spacing. We add row for the class name. Then in our main, we bring in the role and we make it main. And ML is margin to the left, and we want that to be automatic. MR is margin to the right. We also want that to be automatic. This is just our columns. We want that to be 12. And you'll see why, because we could play with these numbers once I have it all up. But this is all prefix. I already know this. I'm not just making this up out of thin air. I've already built this. So I had to play around with all this to get it right, to get it how I want it to be. And then this is to actually set our container with our max width and our minimum height, okay? Okay, so it's okay if this doesn't really make sense, because the thing is that if we save now and then we load, first of all, it's going to fail to compile because main doesn't exist. So actually, let's just go ahead and make this main component. So what we're going to do is go into components and make a new folder. We're going to call it main.js. And now we're going to import in our app.js the main, even though it's nothing yet. So we're just going to say import main from main.js. Let's save that. Now let's go back to our local host. It says it can't resolve main. Of course it can't, because I'm not exporting anything from main yet. So it's just empty. So let's go ahead and says can't resolve main. So why isn't it resolving it? Okay, so I actually made a folder by accident. So don't do that. Delete a folder if you made a folder. We want to make a file in components called main.js. All right, let's save. Let's go back. All right, and of course it's going to crash it because there's nothing really in there. So I have to get rid of the main. Okay, so it's working. All right, so let's put the main back. It's going to crash because it's not actually importing anything yet, but we can just fix that. So if we just go to main.js, now in main.js, this is where we're going to actually build our card, okay? So if you remember, this is where we're going to be building our buttons and our staking, our depositing, our withdrawing, and our balance. And I don't want to show you the final page again because I want you to actually just visualize it. I could load it up very easily, but I don't want to do that. I want you to challenge your imagination. I want to challenge your ability to visualize the future. You need to be able to visualize the steps ahead. That's what's going to make you a better programmer, okay? A better engineer in general. All right. So to build up the main, let's do the same thing that we've been doing thus far with everything else. We could actually go to the nav bar and just copy everything, go to main and paste. And let's call this, okay, we can get rid of the bank. We don't need that. We're going to change the name from class navbar to class main. We're going to export default main. And we're going to get rid of everything in here in the return over here. We'll just add a div because we need to have a div in there because it has to return something. Okay, so let's save this. And now if we go to app.js, we should have the main in there and it shouldn't be crashing anymore. So if we go back to our local host, yeah, okay, so we're not crashing anymore. That's good. Very, very good. Okay, so we're not going to build out now. Okay, so let's just build out the shell. Let's just build out the basic user interface for the main so we can have that. So let's do that together now. Okay, so for our div, we're going to add an ID of content. And we're going to do an MT, margin to the top. Sorry, class name equals, we're going to do MT. I did 3. Okay. And again, you know, this is stuff that I already know because I've done it before. That's how I'm coming up with all this stuff. This is margin to the top. And then what do we want to do in here? Well, we want to have a table, essentially. It's going to be a table that's going to hold the information for our staking, our balance, and our buttons. So we can just do that by bringing in a table, HTML style. And then we have access to more JSX in this. We can actually have TR. Have a TR, oops, to our table row, and then we're going to have TH. We can make 2 THs, and then we can have 2 THs inside of here. And then, so our TH are our table cells. And you know what? We're going to wrap these rows around a table head. So our header, so we're going to do a T head, that. All right. And then after our head, we're going to have a body. So we're going to have a T body. Just like that. We're going to have another T row, and then we're going to have some TDs as well. So we're going to do TD. And TD is just the table data cells. These are just really the semantics to make minor differences for when we're building our table so we can be more specific with our styling and the way we want to design, overall design the user interface and the experience for the table. Okay, so this is our table and it's empty right now. So let's go ahead and put some stuff into our table, right? So we can bring in class name, and from our bootstrap here, we got table. We're going to do text will be muted and text will be center. So we're going to center the text and we're bringing in this table and we are just adding some style over here. So that's it. For the rows, we're going to have some writing. So we have to remember that the table is going to be dark, so we remember that we're going to be using this darker background. So we want to have a nice white text font. So we're just going to do a style. Color is going to be white. Now in our TH, we can actually access the parameters scope, and we can add some more styling for the scope of our column here. This is in our table cells, and we're going to do that as well as here. And we're going to write staking balance, right? Because we're going to want to have our staking balance. And we're going to have our reward balance. And for our body, we're going to do the same thing. So we'll take this color white, we'll copy it and paste it over here. And what are we going to keep in our body? Well, we're going to have our staking balance, reward balance at the head. And then in the body, I think what we want to have is our USDT, our Tether token balance, right? So we want the USDT, and then we want the rewards, and we can just write this as RWD, right? So this is for the, okay, so let's just save this for a second, and let's refresh. Okay, and right now, because our background is white, we can't actually see because I've actually made the font color white. But if you highlight, if you hold down your mouse and you click, you're going to see staking balance, reward balance, USD, and RWT. And we actually see we've got the lines here for our rows, and from our table kind of set up here, we've got it centered. So we see the styling is starting to come together. I guess for the time being, it doesn't have to be white. If you want to be able to see it, we can switch the color here to black. And then if we go back, There, see, staking balance, reward balance. So we've got our nav bar on the top, the account number, staking balance in USDT, reward balance is going to display in RWD here. Okay, good. So we're making some progress. The important thing is that things are displaying correctly. Let's finish up the main component skeleton layout together. So let's go back. And after our table, basically what we want to do is below the table, we want to have a form where you can type in how much. So you have an input box where you can type in essentially how many tokens you want to stake, how many you want to deposit, and then you can deposit those tokens. And deposit those tokens, you can see your balance, and you can also unstake. You can withdraw from the bank. All right, so we're going to need to build a form for that. So let's do that actually in the next video. Okay, take a minute, have a coffee, relax, read a book, or just jump straight in to the next video. Bye-bye.